This is the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast here on Saturday, June 23rd, 2018, right here on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube. If this video goes longer than 10 minutes on YouTube, look down in the description. There you will find a link to listen to the rest of the episode on SoundCloud. Welcome back. Really excited to be back on this Saturday here for the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast. And today, I talked about it yesterday, and it's still the top thing, I guess, in my mind, and that is, of course, the World Cup, where it comes across every single 4 years, and this year in 2018 in Russia, it's certainly been a wild ride so far. I discussed a big overview yesterday, going through all the groups, some of the surprise teams I'm looking out for. But today I want to focus in on one question that's very topical to the region I'm based in, here in the United States, and that is, this morning I've been watching the South Korea-Mexico game. Right now it's halftime. Mexico's up 1-0 off a Carlos Vela penalty kick. By the time you listen to this, the game's probably going to be over, so you'll know the score of that game. But regardless of the score, watching the game brought up an interesting question in my mind. And this is something that Landon Donovan got criticized for earlier in the World Cup. Is, with the United States not in this tournament, should Americans root for Mexico? And I'm here to tell you that they should, and here's why. Because Mexico and the United States have always been these rivals. And when Landon Donovan said that Americans should go root for their neighbors to the south, a lot of people criticized him, saying it was very un-American for him to say that. That it was very going against his team and going against everything he kind of stands for rooting for Mexico. And my question is, why? Why is that going against your team? I look at sports, and especially international soccer, as, first of all, being very competitive. These are nations going up against each other. Of course you're proud to be from America, or from Mexico, or from Switzerland, or whatever. Of course you are. You want to support your national team. However, when your team, such as the United States, fails to qualify, and it's because the team like Mexico beat them during qualifying and qualified out of their group, there is some ill will there. It does suck. But I also want to say, if you're a United States fan, why would you just root for some random team to beat Mexico? Where we've already signed on as a nation to host the 2026 World Cup with Canada and Mexico. The United States, Canada, Mexico is going to be the North American World Cup in 2026, as there's going to be 48 teams. So my question is, why do we have to root against Mexico? Is that we already know there's a lot of Mexican people already that live in the United States. It's a big percent of the population. So my question is, why do we have to root against this nation? Just because we lost to them? To me, that doesn't make any sense. And that as Americans, we should kind of embrace this country down to our south, because especially in soccer, one, they have a very rich history, and something that maybe they have less people than us, but yet their national team is so much better. And maybe as a country, we should look at them and say, how do they do it? Maybe we don't want to do it exactly like they do, but take some things from them, and take some things from them in player development, because they seem to be making some world-class players. So there's ways to learn. There's that competitive spirit, but there's also that thing that, at the end of the day, we're rivals, but, okay, we lost. But that doesn't mean we have to be bitter about it. And I think that American soccer fans, you've seen the ratings go down. I think it'd be awesome for American soccer fans to adopt Mexico as their team for this World Cup. Now, if you're an American soccer fan and your parents are from Germany or Switzerland or whatever, I understand you're rooting for that team. But for the general American soccer fan, we competed our best against a team like Mexico. We did everything we could against the Mexican national team. But at the end of the day, they just had a better squad recently in qualifying, and they were able to get in, and the United States was not able to qualify. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden I have to hate on Mexico. We should root for our rivals, because then it shows that North American soccer maybe is better than people expect, because if you're the United States and you weren't able to qualify because of Mexico, because Mexico, qualified out of your group, but you couldn't, do you all of a sudden want to show the world that the team that did qualify was terrible, meaning that you're not that good, that you couldn't beat them? Or what if Mexico goes out and wins the World Cup? What does it say about the United States and CONCACAF and this whole North American and America and South American and just Americas in general qualifying region? It shows that, hey, it's a lot stronger than people give it credit for, especially North America. That these teams are a lot better than people expect. And we're always considering European teams to be the best, and yet Mexico goes out there and does very well in the World Cup. And so taking into consideration that we're going to be hosting the World Cup with them just in about, I guess it's now 8 years. Judging that, yes, we're rivals, but why can't we now that we lost, accept that defeat in this qualifying? We'll get them next time. Trust me, the United States is going to be ready. Is going to be ready to qualify for the next World Cup. It's not a good look for this nation to not be in the world's biggest stage. But we lost this time, so let's root for them. There's already, there's a big Mexican influence in population in the United States. Let's root. Why can't we root for them and kind of be all together on this one? And I don't think it's an un-American trait to now root for another country. I think it just adds something to the World Cup, because why not root for Mexico? Yeah, they beat us, but you have to accept defeat. The United States was not better than this Mexican team. So hopefully, I think Americans should definitely support El Tri and get behind them for this World Cup. Especially they're doing pretty well. They're right now among one of my favorites, I think, to win the World Cup with the way they've been playing. One of the most informed teams in the tournament. With that, that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Jackson Neill Sports Podcast here on Saturday, June 23rd, 2018. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can catch this on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and YouTube. So go check all those out. Also, this is published in conjunction with the Jackson Neill Music Podcast, which comes out 3 to 4 times a week, just like this podcast does, on the same exact platforms, except I talk about music. Also, in the same feeds as this, check out Anything Goes with Jackson Neill, my podcast. That's part of the radio show that airs on Tuesdays on 107.9 FM. There, on the podcast, you can catch all the interviews I do with musicians. I have a really cool one coming up with this singer, Tala, from the UK. She is awesome. Just released her new song, Stay Here in the Sun. Check that song out. But that's coming up this Tuesday. Follow me on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, at JacksonNeill20, to catch links to everything I do, snippets of interviews, and much more. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you all next time.